Let's explore the gardens of Hampton Court Palace today. You can relax in over 60 acres of the beautiful Hampton Court Gardens that run down to the River Thames, featuring sparkling fountains, glorious displays of over 1 million flowering bulbs, and 750 acres of tranquil royal parkland. Monarchs and their gardeners have all influenced the gardens in different ways. In the early 1500s, Cardinal Wolsey laid out the first small North gardens before Henry VIII took over the palace, strutting through his heraldic privy garden and hunting deer in Bushy Park. From Charles II's elegant long water to William III and Mary II's fine Baroque gardens, including the maze, to dazzling displays of Victorian mass bedding, Hampton Court Gardens have always been at the cutting edge of design. The gardens cover an area of 66 acres, and the wider estate covers 750 acres. Some of the trees on the east front are around 300 years old. The others, which are between 75 and 100 years old, have been planted where the original late 17th century trees have been lost. William III and Mary II created the Great Fountain Garden on the east front to complement their elegant new Baroque palace between 1689 and 1702. Their gardener Daniel Marrott created a garden containing 13 fountains and planted two radiating avenues of yew trees in the fashionable form of a goose foot. From the palace, you can enjoy the great fountain garden with its circular pond and avenues, and at the far end, the long water. When Mary II's sister, Queen Anne, between 1702 and 1714, succeeded to the throne, she had the garden radically simplified, leaving only one fountain and simple topiary yew trees. If you stand directly under Anne's portrait in Antonio Verrio's ceiling painting, the three great lime tree avenues radiate from you. Beyond the garden, you can see the long water, the canal dug in 1662 for Charles II, who was Anne's uncle. can relax in the shade of the historic yew trees, marvel at the glistening fountain, or take a stroll along the broad walk at 580 meters. It is the longest herbaceous mixed flower border in Britain. A privy or private garden has existed on the south side of Hampton Court Palace since the reign of Henry VIII. The Privy Garden today is a restoration of William III's Baroque Privy Garden of 1702. Gardeners have restored the grounds using the original plant varieties, and the hornbeam bower and statues were all part of the king's original design. The wrought iron screens, designed and built by Jean Tijoux for William III, stand at the river end. Henry VIII designed his as a heraldic garden. Later, art collector Charles I created a simple Italianate style garden in which to display his classical statues. William III didn't live to enjoy his new garden. In 1702, he fell from his horse and died 2 weeks later. Don't miss the world famous Great Vine, thought to be the oldest and largest in the world. This is a black Hamburg eating variety planted in 1768 by Capability Brown. As a young man, Henry VIII was athletic, graceful, and loved sports, especially tennis. He was a keen and talented player who spent hours on court. In 1519, the Venetian ambassador wrote, "It was the prettiest thing in the world to see him play, his fair skin glowing through a shirt of the finest texture." Henry's second wife, Anne Boleyn, was gambling on a game of tennis when she was arrested to be taken to the Tower of London. She even complained that she couldn't collect her winnings. The first tennis court at Hampton Court Palace was built for Cardinal Wolsey between 1526 and 1529. The current tennis court was built for Charles I in 1625. 3 of its walls date from this period, and the external wall to the right of the viewing gallery is one of Cardinal Wolsey's originals. This is where kings and their courtiers once enjoyed this fast-paced, exciting sport. The Magic Garden and Children's Play Area was formally opened by the Duchess of Cambridge in March 2016. Built on the site of Henry VIII's tournament grounds, this 1-acre garden is inspired by Tudor motifs and legendary heraldic creatures. It contains child-friendly planting towers and walkways, and an amphitheater for play and performances, and even a steam-breathing dragon. The famous maze is situated to the north of the palace in the wilderness area of the gardens. Its precise origins are as lost as the people in it, but it is most likely to have been made for William III in the last years of his reign and completed by Queen Anne's gardener, Henry Wyse. When the gardens were thrown open to the public in 1838, the maze became one of the most popular parts of a day out at the palace. Wilderness began its royal existence in 1531 as Henry VIII's orchard. It stayed as an orchard until the late 1600s. In the early 1800s, the wilderness was tidied up and planted with flowering shrubs and small woodland trees. Daffodils were planted in the open areas, increasing year on year until today. There are over 12,000 with around a million bulbs in the garden in total, making for a breathtaking spring display. As part of the changes to the old kitchen gardens in the early 20th century, one of the vault compartments between the cafe and the barracks yards was laid out informally as a rose garden. It was planted with Old English scented roses to delight visitors. 10 years later, it was rearranged into the geometric pattern that exists today and hybrid roses planted. The statues of Flora and Adonis moved in with abundance in 1995 after they were evicted from the restored Privy Garden. Pond gardens were originally fish ponds made for Henry VIII. In the 1690s, Mary II transformed the Tudor pond yards into sunken gardens to display her rare and exotic plant collection. In the early 20th century, gardeners created the Dutch style garden that you see today with its tiered paths, topiary hedges, statues, and bedding. Longwater Canal is a beautiful stretch of water completed in 1660 by King Charles II. The king dedicated this water feature, complete with its double row of lime trees, as a wedding present to his bride to be, Catherine of Braganza. Other features to look out for are North Garden, Banqueting House, Orangery, and the Kitchen Garden.
Thank you for paying us a visit.
See you next time. Bye bye.
Very nice.